There's a saying going round, I begin to think it's true. It's awful hard to love someone when they don't care about you. Once I had me a loving gal, sweet as any in this town. And now I'm sad and lonely, she's gone and turned me down. Now I ain't got nobody cares for me. I am so sad and lonely, won't somebody come and take a chance with me?
You are listening to Community Voices on NPR Illinois. I'm Vanessa Ferguson, and today we are getting to know our neighbor, Randy Irwin. Hi, Randy. How are you doing?
Hi, Vanessa. I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm really good now that you're here because you have a lot of things that have happened in your life that I'm really excited to talk to you about. You're also called Cowboy Randy, which is a lot of fun. So maybe we should start with, where are you from? I read that you're not originally from here.
Yeah, I was born on the Gulf Coast, near Houston, basically. It's about 90 miles south of there. It's a place called Ganado, Texas. It's a tiny little place.
I love that. You're a Texan.
Yeah, tiny, yes. Tiny Texan.
So how did you make your way up to Central Illinois and Springfield?
Well, first I moved to Dallas and got a job doing radio and television and stuff like that, and recording. And then I moved to Alaska for a while, and then I moved back to Texas. And my ex-wife, Dusty Rhodes, who used to be a reporter here, got a job at the Illinois Times, so we moved up here, and I've been here 20 years now. Yeah.
Well, you are really talented. I've been enjoying listening to your music.
Oh, well, you're very kind.
Well, I'm telling the truth. So you play guitar. From what I've seen, you play guitar, you sing, you're known for yodeling. So I kind of want to get into, how you kind of embraced music in the first place. What inspired you to pick up a guitar and start singing?
Well, first I started on piano when I was 5. I saw a piano. I liked the piano, and I demanded a piano from my parents. And they said, well, you're 5. And I said, well, I'll just scream until you get me a piano. And so I got me a piano, and then I learned a couple of just on my own. I just started chording and stuff. And they said, well, I guess you could have lessons too. And so that started it. And then I was in a polka band when I was 12. So I turned pro when I was 12, and then started studying to do multi-track recording for film and video and radio at the University of Texas, and got a degree in that. Worked in radio, and then decided, no, radio's not for me. I'm tired of writing copy, and I'll just go to Dallas and start playing music full time. And so I turned pro at 12, so it's been 53 years.
Okay, but you started with piano, you played polka,
with a trumpet. Yeah, I was playing trumpet.
And you played trumpet.
Yeah. Oh, and then I played accordion in the Gypsy Jazz Band for a long time. So.
Wow, and accordion. Okay, so what I'm getting at here is all these things are not what I think of when I think of being a yodeling expert and singing kind of those old country western tunes. So how did you get into that genre?
The technique is something that you find worldwide. You find it in Africa and Asia and Europe and the Americas, and it's just a falsetto, switching between your falsetto and your chest voice, making that little tube of air resonate at a higher frequency, and you alternate back and forth. And if you have a good relative pitch, or even if some of them have perfect pitch, I have like a rudimentary perfect pitch. Mostly yodelers and that type of voice, they have a strong baritone and a really strong soprano, or you ever have a strong alto and a really strong coloratura soprano. So you get those two types of voices, and there's a big break in between. So you can never be an operatic singer, but you can yodel if you want to.
But you've been paid to yodel, so did someone just come to you and say, "Hey, I'll give you some money if you yodel," or how did you get into doing it?
No, it's been a struggle. It's been a struggle because it's not in high demand these days. But no, I started doing a cowboy act. I would trick rope. I learned how to taught myself to trick rope, and then I would do kids gigs. I would trick rope and tell cowboy stories, and then that's how Cowboy Randy came into being, that guy. And yodeling Roy Rogers and Gene Autry, old-time cowboy songs from movies and stuff like that. And then I started getting into more obscure stuff that was the jazz of the 20s and 30s and 40s, Western swing and vaudeville stuff. And everybody in those genres, they used that technique as well. They used it kind of like a jazz scat thing, so I could transition to that.
I'm kind of taken aback by this because when I was reading about you, I know you're a yodeler. You have an act called Cowboy Randy. You're from Texas. Yeah. So I expect you to come in here being kind of a cowboy. And how much of cowboy Cowboy Randy is actually reflective of who you are as a person?
Well, I grew up on a farm. We had cows, and we had sorghum, and we had rice, and we had corn, and I just grew up as a farm boy, and I would go out to visit people in West Texas, and Texas, it's all about country, western. So let's say that's 20% of me, and the rest of it was like I was obsessed with Beethoven from the age of 4. So I listened to nothing but Beethoven over and over and over and over again until I was like maybe 11 or 12. So steeped in Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, and all that. So that's about 80% of what I am. But it translates really well into just modern pop music.
This is fascinating to me because I also grew up on kind of an animal farm in the middle of nowhere. And I didn't really associate myself with anything really country or western. I was kind of wanting to be a funny comic. I didn't think of myself. I mean, it's a good act to have, Cowboy Randy. Yeah.
It's a good thing to have, and it makes a nice website, which is cowboyrandy.com, yay. And it's easy to remember, and I can load all my stuff up, whether it's classical or pop or remakes of old traditional music of different kinds that I've been doing lately.
You're just an all-around musician.
Well, just an odd person.
Oh.
I got beat up a lot.
Oh, no.
Well.
Well, we'll show them now because I'm going to bring up something that is like the coolest thing.
I had a smart mouth. I deserved it.
Oh, okay. Well, if you deserved it, but no. So let's talk about something that I am so impressed by and I really admire you for. You got to work with the Walt Disney Films to do the movie, it's animated movie, Home on the Range. Yep. Can you tell us about that experience and getting to work with production staff?
Yeah, well, they ran through 5 or 6 guys. They needed a male voice that could do that kind of vocal. And they're like, one was too European, and one was too Western, and one was too this, and one was too that. And then he was too low, and he was just too light. And they finally got to me, and they're like, I was like the last one in line. And so they sent me the score. And I sat down with that score, and I studied it for about a month and a half, and I just did that every day for 4 or 5 hours a day. And finally, I went to do the initial audition, but they were desperate by that time. They said, "Oh man, you just went in and did it." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, it's easy. I didn't tell them I spent like a month going over this thing and tearing it apart." So I got the gig, and you show up there, and everybody's, Alan Menken and all the production crew and all the guys, the bean counters are in the back, and they're making sure everything's going okay. The arranger's there, and they stick you in a little booth, and they say, "All right, there's a 75-piece orchestra going to be playing behind you." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's the first time." And so I just like sang my little heart out, and I actually got Alan Menken to stand up from the control booth, and he started dancing around because he thought nobody could ever finally get that particular thing, because it was a mixture of jazz and blues and kind of like wild sound, they call it when you do it on a soundtrack. It's just like strange vocalizations and kind of alpine yodeling stuff, and so he was just like, "Oh, finally somebody could do this thing." And I'm like, "Yeah," and that's the only thing I know how to do, and I'll never see you guys again, because Disney will pick from, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of vocalists all over the world. They're just like, "You can specifically do this one thing, and you're so good at it, and do that, and see you again in the next lifetime." I mean, I went and redid it in Canada for 33 languages, because yodeling is the universal language.
Right, when they have to release the film, they have to redo it in different languages.
And just thousands of voice people, well, at least several hundreds of voice people and vocalists came in and filled in all the rest of the foreign stuff, and they were all really good. So they'd meld me in with all these really good vocalists and sound and voice actors, and it's just amazing that they have this deep pool of talent that they can just dip into. When it comes to players, they can just come in and sight read it, just like, here's the score. They just lay it down. It's so impressive. And then the vocalists come in and, 2 or 3 takes, they're done, So.
Wow. And you're one of them.
I can do that one thing. I'm happy I can do that one thing.
Yeah.
And it paid for most of my house. And
oh, that's good.
yeah, so
wow, what an incredible experience, and getting to work with Alan Menken. I
genius.
I got to meet him once, and he was a delight.
No, he's a big Beethoven freak too.
Really?
We bonded on that. I said, "Oh man, I like your stuff." It's just like I listen to Beethoven all the time. He's just like, oh, "Yeah, Beethoven. He's the guy. He's the guy that invented modern music." I'm like, "Yeah, he and Satchmo. Yeah, they all it's all the same thing."
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh yeah, oh yeah." So.
And for those who maybe don't know Alan Menken, he is responsible for Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast and Little Shop of Horrors and the Newsies, and just it goes on and on and on.
Yeah, he's a genius of the highest order.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got to work with him. Wow. Yeah. Super jealous right here.
Well, it was fun. It was lots of fun.
Well, that is awesome. You know, another thing I'm a bit envious about is that I read that you got to perform at Carnegie Hall. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, I was with a group called Cafe Noir, and we used to do gypsy jazz and new classical type stuff and arrangements. And we were with Columbia Artists for a while, which is the biggest classical music agency in the world, and they had a little segment that would tour you around the United States. So we did that, and before we did that, there was a showcase at a recital hall. So I'm like, oh my God, Carnegie Hall. And how do you get to Carnegie Hall?
We practice.
No, there's a subway stop right below Carnegie Hall. And you get off the subway, you go up inside Carnegie Hall, and there's the big hall, which we ran around the top. The poor guards, we went to the top, and we're like, whisper on stage. And then I go down and I whisper on stage, I can hear you from the bottom of the big. Yeah, we went all over, and they're like, would you please stop running around the facility? And so we went to the recital hall, which is nice. It's like a 500-seat, 400-seat. Smaller venue, and that's my claim is I got to go in and do a solo at the recital hall at Carnegie Hall. Nobody could ever take that away from me, but I was playing small venues in Dallas at that time, and I'm like, it's just Randy showing up at the whatever venue we were playing, little clubs and stuff, and then we played Carnegie Hall. Then I came back, and they're like, did I actually play Carnegie Hall?
Was this a dream?
It was surreal. And the Carnegie Deli is next door, and that was so much fun. You just go across the street and get a great big Reuben sandwich, and it was real New York.
I was going to say, this sounds like a New York artist's dream come true.
Yeah, it really was. It was so amazing.
You also played Queen Elizabeth Hall?
Queen Elizabeth Hall, yeah, you're right.
In the UK?
Yeah.
So your performing career has taken you all over the world.
Yeah, I'm afraid
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, we did a tour of the UK. That was many years ago, and La Levitt. It was a festival there on the West Bank, and Queen Elizabeth is like a 600-seat, medium size. It's really nice, and we went in there, and they had 3 or 4 acts, and La Levitt came up, and then I was right after him, and I did my thing, and then Wembley Arena, they had a festival there, so I got to follow Willie Nelson there, and then BBC. Oh, I got to do a segment with Kylie Minogue.
No, you did not.
Yeah, she's about 4 feet tall, and me and my guitar player got to do a segment behind her, and of course he fell in love with her.
I mean, how could you not?
Well, and then Bananarama came up, and that was a BBC thing. So I got to do a tour of South Korea. They had a yodeling festival out there.
In South Korea?
In South Korea. The big time yodeling alpine. Yeah, you wouldn't
Who would have thought? Yeah.
I'd never dreamed. And they said, oh, you got to come over and we'll do that. So we did a couple of weeks there. That was like 5 or 6 years ago. And, I don't know. We played L.A. a lot. We played New York a lot.
Wow. Wow. If you're just joining us, this is Community Voices on NPR Illinois. I'm Vanessa Ferguson, and we're getting to know our neighbor, Randy Irwin. And I should mention, too, Randy, you've performed on the BBC, NPR. We already mentioned Walt Disney Films. I read Warner Brothers as well, something you've done some work with. Do you want to tell us about that? David Byrne, I worked with him on, it was a cameo, really, and part of the soundtrack for a movie for Warner Brothers, and True Stories was the name of that. And John Goodman's in that film. John Goodman. Did you get to meet John Goodman? No, we were cut in together between me and Pop Staples and John Goodman and David, and it was just all like cut to different locations, and then they had us on stage doing this crazy yodeling thing that was part of a celebration of specialness.
So that was the conceit there. So it was fun. It was a fun time.
And now we have the pleasure of having another special performance from you, which is at the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library Museum. You're an artist there. So can you kind of tell us what you do there?
Well, I've been doing Ghost of the Library since late 2004. I'm about 15,000 performances into that.
Wow, that's a lot.
It's a 9-minute monologue, and we were doing it more than 16 times a day. And now it's a little less, maybe 12, 14 times a day. And so you got to bear down and just push right through it. It's like vaudeville used to be. You do your 2 or 3 shows and move on to the next town. That's how it is. And it's always the same 9 or 10 minutes. So I've been doing that, and then they allowed me to do music in the plaza. Well, I did it in Mrs. Lincoln's attic. They stuck me in the attic, which is appropriate. I should be locked in the attic. That was a good place to woodshed and get the repertoire up. So now I got I do like 60 or 70 songs now, from the 1820s to like the 1920s in the plaza 2-3 times a week. And I'm doing a show with Reggie Guyton called Small Beginnings, and it's Robert Small's story, stealing a ship and escaping slavery. And he and I are doing that. I'm doing the music on a mountain dulcimer. And then they're opening an exhibit. They needed a soundtrack. So I said, well, I've done soundtracks, and started composing. So I composed about 50 minutes of music for the exhibit that's going to be going up in the Illinois Gallery.
Wow. You do a lot. So let me just say thank you so much for coming in here today on Community Voices so we could learn about you and your life. And thank you for bringing us so much music to Central Illinois.
Thanks, Vanessa. It's been a pleasure.
To listen to past Community Voices segments, visit nprillinois.org. Community Voices airs weekdays at noon and Saturdays at 5 p.m. Production assistance is provided by the Community Voices team, Randy Eccles, Vanessa Ferguson, and Tim Bowl. I'm Bee Bonner. Thanks for listening, and good afternoon.
Won't somebody come and take a chance with me? I'll sing you sweet love songs, honey, all of the time, if you'll only be that pretty mama of mine. And now I ain't got nobody, nobody cares for me. I'll sing you sweet love songs, honey, all of the time, if you'll only be that pretty mama of mine. And now I ain't got nobody, nobody cares for me.